people do when they find out I'm a Jesus freak? They'd probably ostracize you in social situations. Hey Jesus freak, talking to you once again. You know, we do more video responses to each other than we do to anyone else, and I think that's because we both acknowledge that we're each other's arch nemesis. And I want to kind of examine that for a moment. Because, okay, well, first of all, we have to get to the very root of good and evil, right and wrong, ethical or unethical, whatever terms you prefer, it doesn't really matter. It all boils down to the same thing: that which is right, that which is wrong, that which is correct, that which is incorrect, blah blah blah, etc., etc. It's all a means of controlling people and trying to prevent certain behaviors and you know, encourage others. You know, today we view these things as opposing forces. They're fighting one another. This is good, this is evil, and they're in battle. And we're just caught in the middle. You know, the human souls are in the balance. You know, ooh, we're tempted to do evil, but then again, we know we should do good. And ooh, yeah, you know, we're just little puppets, and we dance between the good and evil strings, and we just try to do our best to stay on the good side. Whatever. It doesn't really fucking matter. It's pointless and irrelevant. What I want to talk about is not what constitutes good and what constitutes evil, because that discussion has been had to death. But what I'd like to really talk about is the relationship between good and evil. And, you know, like I said, today it's a nature of opposing forces. Oh, we oppose one another. But there's been times in history, in fact, up until the Abrahamic religions like Judaism, Christianity, Islam, until those things came along, good and evil were viewed as being largely cooperative. And this is the symbol that best symbolizes that: the yin and the yang. You know, this symbol, yin is the dark area and yang is the white area, and one side represents the concept of evil or darkness or whatever, and the other side represents the concept of good and, you know, justice, prosperity, whatever you want to consider good as. And you see how these things rely on one another. You see how they are contingent upon one another's success. And existence, and how each is predicated upon the existence of the other, and how each has a seed of the other within it. Within yin there is a seed of yang, within yang there is a seed of yin, and that's, you know, good and evil. It's not so cut and fucking dry. That's what they're trying to say with that symbol. It's talking about basically a harmony between opposites. And we don't talk about that too much anymore, but I think it's an interesting topic. And we'll make it a little bit more contemporary for my fans out there, because I know not everyone wants to hear about you know, old Chinese symbols and philosophy and shit. We'll talk about Batman and the Joker. Those two are arch nemesis. What makes them arch nemesis? Why are they arch nemesis? Why, of all of Batman's rogue gallery, is the Joker his arch nemesis? He has plenty of arch nemesis, but the Joker is his only arch nemesis. Nemesis. The singular in that one. Nemesis, nemesis. Goes back and forth. I'm trying to remember singular, plural, whatever. He has tons of nemesis, but only the Joker is his arch nemesis. And the reason for this is not because of their opposites, although they are very opposite. See, Batman is, you know, this agent of order. He wants to, you know, get the drugs off the streets and get rid of criminals and, you know, order. He's kind of a Nazi, really, when you think about it. Only without, you know, the racial purity thing. It's more of just a behavioral purity. And the Joker is the ultimate anarchist. He wants no order. He loves disorder. In fact, not only does he not respect authority, he doesn't even seem to acknowledge the existence of authority. He is the ultimate anarchist. He recognizes no boundaries, not physical, not societal, not mental. And he basically embodies pure freedom. So you have order versus disorder, and that's what separates them. But what's more interesting is what binds them. They have a strong psychological trauma. Both of them do. You know, you don't dress up in a costume and go either stopping or causing crime without some kind of psychological damage. And they're both dark characters. I mean, Batman is you know, he revels in, you know, being one with the night. You know, he views himself as a symbol of terror. And so does the Joker. And they're both geniuses. Bruce Wayne, of course, is a brilliant detective, and the Joker is a brilliant criminal mastermind. So they share a lot of similarities, and I think that that's what's interesting. When something is totally opposite of something else, yet you can see clear similarities between them. And I think that that's why we're arch nemesis, Jesus Freak. I think that we see a lot of ourselves in each other. And maybe not everyone else sees it, because I never heard anyone really tell me that I'm like you or that you're like me, but I think we see it in one another when we, because we know ourselves and we see our commonality in many places. And here's an issue where that commonality is very pronounced. Because, like you, I find Grand Theft Auto 4 and every other Grand Theft Auto title to be pretty damn reprehensible. I said it. I don't like them. I wouldn't let my kids play them, and I wouldn't play them, and I look down on people who do. Sorry if that offends. Here's the thing, though. When you start talking about how parents should be punished for letting their kids play, or how adults shouldn't be able to play, or how video games like this just shouldn't exist, I take big fucking offense to that. For two reasons. The first reason is, once again, you're a fascist asshole. Because you won't just let people do what they want. If it's not even if you're a Christian and you believe that God has ordained that these things are wrong and His word is absolute law, let Him stand in judgment of these people, not you. You don't get to be God's agent here on earth. You live your fucking life, and you get to go to heaven, and they'll live their lives, and they'll go to hell, and that should be good fucking enough for you. The thing is that if a parent wants to let their kids play that game, then let them fucking play it. If a adult wants to play this game, let them play it. Because maybe they have some kind of problems, and maybe doing it in the game is the only outlet they have. Maybe if they weren't playing violent video games, they would feel the urge to commit true violence. I mean, you never really know. We can't really guess at what effect video games have on us. I mean, they probably have some effect. I don't think that people can sit there and play a violent video game for hours and it not have some effect on their psyche, because it's not natural to be going around stealing cars and shooting people and doing all this stuff and overloading on that kind of sensory information. So I think it does have some kind of psychological impact, but we don't really know what that psychological impact is, and if it does, then it's on them. It's a little thing called, taking responsibility for yourself. And while I oftentimes protest the notion of personal responsibility as being somewhat fascistic in itself, I do think that it has a place. And when it comes to people's personal choices, if they're doing something that's psychologically damaging to themselves, that's their business. Whether that be drugs or video games or whatever. And the second reason that I protest you saying these things is because you indulge in a form of entertainment, a piece of art or literature, or whatever you want to call it, that is so much more repugnant than Grand Theft Auto that it's unbelievable. When you talk about Grand Theft Auto, I mean, imagine if Grand Theft Auto was in any way similar to the Bible. If it contained things like incest, or homophobia, or overt sexism, like not just from the perspective of characters, but from the perspective of God Himself, and it was presented to the people as the truth, and you've raised your kids, I'm assuming, on that supposed truth, that's a lot more damaging to them than Grand Theft Auto could ever be. You teach your kids that a book full of hatred is the truth, and then you say, oh no, you can't play Grand Theft Auto because you might, because your character is a criminal who kills cops and whores and shit. At least that's not presented as being socially acceptable. At least no one gives their kids Grand Theft Auto and says, this is how you should live. But people do give their kids the Bible and say that. And the Bible is every bit as violent, every bit as despicable, every bit as sexist, every bit as every claim that you make. every derisive thing you have to say about Grand Theft Auto, the Bible is 10 times as replete with instances of amorality. So, leave your condemnations at the fucking door. Here's the thing, Jesus Freak. It's not my place, as much as I wish it was, to say that you can't raise your kids to read the Bible, and it's not your place, as much as you wish it was, to tell people that their kids can't play Grand Theft Auto. Freedom means that you do what you do, they do what they do, and at the end of the fucking day, if there's a God, He'll sort it the fuck out, won't He? If you live a good, pious, clean lifestyle, you can go to heaven and they can go to hell, and that's the fucking bottom line. And here's the thing. I'm not even saying that you can't try to change those people's minds. Because you can certainly go to them and confront them about it, but when you start talking about wanting legislation to control what they do, then you remove choice from the matter. And without choice, there's no moral decision. It's just an obedience to some directive. They can't... If you just say, oh yeah, you can't do that because it's the law, then they're no longer making a moral decision. You're making it for them. And they don't grow as individuals, and they can't be expected to, because the only thing they've learned is obedience. You can't teach a person obedience and then expect it to act as a substitute for morality. That's what the Nazis did. Alright, that's all I have to say. Piss off.